I always thought our marriage was unbreakable, until one day my wife Emily asked me if I would allow her to sleep with another man. As I drove to work, I couldn't stop thinking about the topic. My wife had started last night over dinner. This was the first time the topic had come up, but the frequency of these discussions appeared to be rising, and I wasn't sure why. I didn't understand why it kept coming up, or why it was so essential to her. She asked me to tell her again how many women I had slept with before we were exclusive. She also inquired whether I had ever fantasized about previous lovers or thought about them when we were having love. Obviously, the only way I could respond to that was a resounding no. My wife and I had been married for 5 years, and while it was perfect, I would give it a good rating for trust, respect, love, sex, and friendship. In short, everything I believed important in a relationship. I assumed my wife felt the same way. I genuinely believed we were living our dream. A good marriage, a great property in a pleasant neighborhood, and enough money and free time to enjoy vacations, delicious cuisine, wine and entertainment. My name is William Harrison, but my friends call me James. My wife's name is Emily. I am a 5'11" and blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy of Nordic origin. This happened when I was in the first or second year with junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. I have enough Irish in me to fuel periodic outbursts of explosive rage. Fortunately, I've kept it under control since high school, when I learned the hard way through numerous battles. Bad words are far more effective instruments than fists. I've always been in decent shape growing up. I played soccer and hockey all year long, and spent time doing weights in my basement. I continued to exercise on a daily basis, played an adult soccer league and enjoyed punk hockey. Emily, on the other hand, exudes inherent sex appeal. Her bright eyes, perfect skin, and welcoming smile put people at ease and drew them in. She has an instinctive capacity to make people feel at ease and encourage them to chat about nearly anything. Emily is an excellent listener, who truly cares about her friends and workplace. Never judge them. Her candor might often border on flirtatious, but she has a knack for breaking off conversations before they pass any uncomfortable boundaries. This was never an issue for me. Emily draws attention not only because of her charisma, but also because of her attractive form. At 5'7" and tall with blonde hair, blue eyes, and an incredible physique, she turns heads everywhere she goes. Her nicely formed toned legs, and outwardly, her most prominent feature, are the product of 4 or 5 nights of dedicated gym time per week. Her favorite pastime, outside of work. I've told her several times how difficult it is for me to refrain from touching her whenever she walks by, and she's never complained. Emily seems to have the ideal personality, at least for me. However, she does have one annoying habit. Emily rarely backs down from a decision she has made. She gets persuaded she is correct, especially in circumstances where there is a dir of clear facts or scientific data. This tenacity occasionally leads to passionate discussions, although they rarely turn into full-fledged arguments. We married right out of college after dating exclusively for the last 2 years. As a result, Emily had few sexual partners before we married. I, on the other hand, had a wild streak throughout my final year of high school and the first 2 years of college. I slept with as many ladies as possible. One of my first lovers was an older, divorced woman who enjoyed sex and had extensive experience. She taught me how to pleasure a woman and create an unforgettable experience for her. Thanks to her, I gained confidence in my ability to prioritize my partner's demands over my own. When Emily inquired how I was so excellent at gratifying her, I answered that I had read from previous experiences, and she was grateful for the skills I had acquired. She said she was envious of the range of lovers I had before we met. She wished she had more of her own professional experiences. I work as a mechanical engineer at Abbott Labs, where I design and test injection molded components for medical devices, such as ventilators, pumps, and respirators. I appreciate my job because it's difficult without being unduly demanding, and it provides enough money and leisure time to pursue hobbies My latest project is refurbishing a 2.5 Winnebago B-Class RV, which Emily and I intend to take on weekend vacations to Lake Superior's, North Coast Mountains, or even the ocean. Is a CPA with one of the top 5 national accounting and consulting organizations. Her job pays well, isn't too stressful, and occasionally requires her to travel, where she often mentors junior pass on audits. Emily's role required her to accompany junior pass on audits, on occasion, ensuring that they were taught in the company's corporate approach of providing good service and informative reporting. She had just taken a couple extra with a new young employee named Daniel, who had just graduated and was embarking on a 3-year road to earn his CPA designation. Emily had briefly rated his confidence, ambitions, and attractiveness during their first trip together, but she hadn't spoken much about him. Since life continued, as usual with me, spending more and more time working on the RV as it neared completion, my desire to travel with Emily became stronger with each passing day. However, I began to realize that she did not seem as enthused about the notion as I did. This worried me a little, but I told myself that after one or two short road excursions, she'd come to enjoy it. However, I couldn't deny that Emily was as effervescent, outgoing, or communicative with me as she once was. The sex between us was still strong but not lessened, but a few recent meetings stuck out in particular. When Emily got home late from work a few nights ago, she virtually yanked my clothing off and dragged me to bed. The last time this happened, I saw her underwear were already wet as we undressed, indicating that something had gotten her extremely excited after one of those passionate leaning sessions. I went downstairs to begin preparing supper, while Emily rushed into the shower as I sliced vegetables. I realized it was time to address the subtle, yet evident changes in her behavior. Something seemed odd and I wanted to figure it out. I decided to bring it up. When we sat down to dine upstairs, Emily stood under the hot shower, remembering the passionate time we just had while feeling physically pleased. A rush of remorse and anxiety swept over her for the past few weeks. She had been enjoying lunches and happy hours with Daniel. She recently let him coax her into going out to supper and dancing. She realized she was pushing the boundaries too far, and their chats had gotten more flirty, crossing the border of what was suitable for a married lady. She tried to convince herself that she hadn't done anything wrong yet. Emily realized what was really going on. She became captivated with Daniel and the prospect of having sex with someone new. She was emotionally, physically attracted to him. Last week, she decided she was going to sleep with him. I deserve it, she thought, attempting to defend her decision. It will help me get rid of this fixation and refocus on my marriage. She reasoned that James had been with several women before they met, and while she knew he would never cheat on her, she assumed that this one-time encounter would not jeopardize their marriage. In her mind, this would be all about sex. After just one weekend with Daniel, she was determined to have an open chat with James about it. She cared profoundly for him and never wanted to hurt him. So she convinced herself that if she spoke with him openly, he would understand. If James loves me the way I know he does, he will accept this and go on. Well, be stronger for it, she reasoned. However, a part of her questioned if she was deceiving herself. When Emily arrived downstairs, I had made shrimp, salads, cornbread, and poured 2 glasses of wine. She sat at the table, and I decided to dive in. Emily, I started, we need to talk about something, but I'm not sure how to begin. James, just say, what is on your mind? She responded, pleasantly. I adore you, and you love me. We can tell each other anything. I also have something to chat to you about. Why don't you start? Her response took me off guard. Oh, Emily, it sounds rather ominous. How many marriages begin with, we need to talk? I joked, nervously. Don't be stupid, James, she rated, smiling. This isn't particularly horrible. In reality, it will benefit me, and I pledge to make it better for you. Well, I hesitated, I'm not sure how to put it. But Emily, something feels odd about us. You haven't been as open and loving as you typically are in the last several weeks, man. James, she interrupted, a cool smirk in her voice. Did you forget about the amazing lovemaking we just had, Emily? I'm not talking about it, I clarified. But since you brought it up, what made you so horny that you nearly tore my clothes off? Her expression shifted instantaneously before responding defensively. She displayed a flicker of stress, concern and remorse on her face. Well, James, if you don't like me being so horny for you, that's your problem, not mine. Her reply caught me off guard, and I did not let it go. Emily, I can see your sense of guilt and defensiveness. It is evident. Could you please explain what's really going on? Is there anything I should be concerned about? Emily looks down at her plate, recognizing that the conversation had begun on the wrong foot. She understood. She needed to take charge of the situation and steer it in a positive direction. She took a deep breath and braced herself to have the painful talk she had been planning for days. James, I apologize. That is not what I intended to say. Emily spoke, her voice shaking. I need to tell you what's going on, and I need you to know. And remember that I value you and our relationship more than anything. What we had is priceless, and I'm deeply in love with you. Please keep this in mind when we discuss Emily. I answered my gut, nodding. You've got me extremely worried. Now are you having an affair? Are you cheating on me? Her eyes widened with shock. James, how can you say that? You know, I'd never cheat on you. I respect you too much for that. She snapped, then softened her tone. But I really need to talk to you about something. And I need you to listen to me. Pay close attention. Allow me to explain everything. And then ask me any questions you have. Okay. Just remember that I adore you. I only want you. I want to have children with you, grow old with you, and always be your companion. What I'm about to say may be difficult to hear, but I need you to hear it. All her Ray Davids did not relieve my worries. My pulse quickened. Okay. Emily, go ahead. I spoke, my voice firm, but strained. Do you remember me mentioning Daniel, my coworker, the one I'd gone on a couple trips with? She started carefully. I nodded, my jaw answered. Well, I'd been eating lunch with him, going to happy hour on occasion, and we even had dinner together last week. What the hell? Emily, I responded, my voice rising. You claimed you were not cheating on me or having an affair, and now you admit to one. You're not, she yelled back, tears forming in her eyes. Damn you, James, I said. I would never cheat on you. I have not done anything physical with him. You promised to listen, so just let me continue. I tightened my fists and sat back, staring at her. Fine. Go on. She swallowed hard and proceeded. Yes, maybe I crossed the line by spending time with him, but not informing you about it. I know I don't love him. Not even close. But we have been flirting. The things we've said and shared have been loaded with sexual innuendo. When due at first, it felt innocent, just a touch risque. But that changed when he told me he wanted to make love with me. Her voice faltered, but she persevered. James, H.E.S. 7 years younger than me, very fit and attractive. I became completely infatuated with him. I jumped out of my chair, enraged. Go damn it. Emily, are you leaving me? Do you adore him? Are you certain you haven't already slept with him? And you're only using this to tell me? No, she cried, her voice breaking. I have not slept with him, or anybody else. That is part of the problem. Please listen to me. I looked at her, quivering with rage and amazement, but sat back down and motioned for her to continue. I love you. James, only you. Daniel is only a youngster. I could never be in love with him. But I cannot lie to you. I am feeling deprived, she acknowledged cautiously. I've only been with a few people before we met and you. Well, us in the first. You've had a lot more adventures. I feel as if I was robbed out of sowing my wild oats before we fell in love. Her voice cracked, And she stopped as if gathering confidence to finish. Now I know that this young man whom I'm incredibly drawn to wants me. I can't get it out of my head today at work. We flirted again. Which is why I was so horny when I got home. I needed you. James. I needed to make love to you. My chest tightened and my pulse raced. A wave of sadness and shock washed over me, and Emily's face fell as if it mirrored the storm in my heart. She promptly attempted to clarify further. James, I didn't say it correctly. She spoke. Desperately making love with you is much more than just sex. It's the most fulfilling feeling I've ever experienced. But I can't stop thinking about this man. And I've decided I want to have sex with him. Only once. This is a one-time thing. A word struck me. Like a freight train. My jaw dropped and tears welled in my eyes. As she rushed to explain. He'd like to take advantage of this one opportunity to have a sexual experience with another man. Before we get serious about our children's professions. Everything, she continued. Her voice, trembling, but unwavering. I believe I am deserving of this. And I respectfully request that you grant it to me. I've told you, I'd never cheat on you. And I mean, if that's why I'm asking for your permission. Instead of doing this behind your back. I sat there, stunned and unable to speak. Tears slid down my cheeks as Emily continued to plead her case. James, I love only you, she said, her own voice breaking. I want to be married to you, to grow old with you. This is just sex. It's not love. It's a one-time haul. Has to have this experience and get it out of my mind. I swear, I will make it up to you for the rest of our lives. If you let me have this, I'll never cheat on you, never. And that's why I'm begging you to let me do this. Please let this be a testament of your love. For me. I rose up from the table. My hands trembling with fury and sadness. My eyes burned as I glanced at her disbelief and treachery. Overwhelmingly. Proof of my love for you. Emily, I shouted, my voice cracking. Here's what I'm hearing. You've already cheated on me. You're having an emotional affair. And now, you want me to give you permission to take it further. Emily's face paled as the weight of her actions and words struck him. She recognized the harm she had already done to our marriage. And for the first time, she questioned if it was already too late to restore it. James, stop. Emily's voice shook as she said, this is not what you think. It is not an affair. I know. I have not slept with him. But, you'll admit, I kissed him a couple times after joyful hours. Perhaps it was the wine. Or maybe it was the excitement of being with someone new. But it did turn me on. I understand that was incorrect. In telling you this, because I respect you. This is not an affair. It's only something I'll need. Once, I will never love him. I will always love just you. But I think I need this. If you love me, as much as I believed you, did you give me this? It's just sex. James, it is not love, and it means nothing. I stared at her disbelief, becoming to cold anger. Emily, I can't believe you're asking me this. You've already mistreated me, and thus by engaging in emotional and sexually heated connection with this man. You have already cheated on me by discussing sex with him and kissing him. Emily, that sounds like cheating. To me, kissing someone else is equally intimate as sleeping with them. And now, you're telling me you want to sleep with him because you believe you need it. I can't believe how naive I was. I assumed you loved me as much as I love you, but I would never harm you. The way you are currently hurting me. Do you realize how much damage you've already done to our marriage? James stopped being overly theatrical. Emily shot back, her frustration rising to the surface. I love you. Only you. And you may believe me. That is why I'm telling you this. Instead, do it. Behind your back. This is not about you. This is about me. It's just pointless sex. Okay. Meaningless sex. I repeated, my tone tinged with cynicism. Fine. Then perhaps I will go out and have some pointless sex of my own. And you may understand how useless it is for you. With that, I rose up, grabbed my keys, and walked toward the door. James, God damn it. Grow up. Emily yelled after me. Come back here. This is not a terrible thing. This will make me and us better after this. We'll be able to show you more love and care than ever before. I froze at the door before turning to face her. My voice trembled from fury and grief. Screwing a man who is not your husband will help you improve. Holy hell. Emily, you are totally delusional. Right now, I don't understand how you can say you love me and treat me like this. You expect me to simply take the betrayal, swallow it, and go on. So guess what? I will not. If you follow through on this, we're done. Do you comprehend what I'm saying over tears? Welled in my eyes as I wrenched open the door and stormed out to my vehicle. Emily dashed to the doorway, her voice urgent. Now, James. No, please come back and let me show you how much I adore you. We can get through this. James. It will be nice for me. And I will make it equally good for you. As I backed out of the driveway, I hesitated and looked at her through tears. The agony in her voice simply added to my sadness and astonishment. She had suggested it would be beneficial for me. Her comments echoed in my mind as I drove out into the night. Good for her. What the hell is going on my chest? Clenched and tears blurred my eyes. God. What should I do now? Emily sat in the living room, shocked, depressed, and concerned. The fight had progressed well beyond her expectations. God, she thought. How did I mess that up so badly? She replayed the talk in her head, trying to figure out why James cowled and see things from her perspective. Why didn't he realize how much she needed? It would not harm their relationship. It would not affect her feelings for him. It was just sex. Why couldn't he see this? But Emily realized she had already harmed their marriage. She hated to admit it, but this was the worst fight they'd ever had. James had never walked out on her. She never questioned her love for him for the first time. She questioned his love for her, even with that nagging shame. Emily's mind stayed firm. She had already made plans. This Saturday, Daniel would pick her up, drive her to brunch, and then check into the Hilton. They would spend the day in bed, then go out for dinner and gossip before returning for more sex that night. And most likely Sunday morning, Emily intended to have as much sex as possible with Daniel before returning home. Sunday evening, she told herself that this would allow her to have focused on her marriage and devote herself entirely to James. They'll get over it, she thought. I know he is sad right now, but after it's over, hell, understand it. Didn't mean anything. You'll explain it better then. Well, move on. Stronger than ever. She refused to recognize to herself that she was being selfish, or that the damage might be irreversible. But as the hours passed, with no word from James, her concerns grew. He had left in such a bad mental state that he wasn't answering the phone. MLY began pacing the room, dread creeping into her chest. What if I had already lost him? Emily waited anxiously for James's call or text, confident that he simply needed time to think things through. She assumed HED ultimately call her. They'd reconcile and HED return home so she could show him how much she loved him. But as the hours passed with no word, her concern rose. She tried calling him, but he did not answer. She finally left him a voicemail. James, I am sorry you are taking this so seriously, and that it has wounded you. Please don't become irritated. I only love you and want to be with you forever. This is not about you or me. This is about me. About getting something off my chest that I hadn't had the opportunity to do before we met. Please understand and get back to me. I feel tired. Emily prepared for bed. She checked her phone one last time before lying down, but James had still not responded. She fell asleep, restlessly, exhausted, and emotionally spent. Meanwhile, I drove to a Hilton in the neighboring suburb. Tears trickled down my cheeks. I booked in for the night and ended up drinking way too much at the hotel bar. Disbelief and pain surged through my consciousness. Emily, how could you believe this was okay? How could she claim to love me and yet insist on having sex outside of our marriage. I ignored her phone calls and voicemails, since I was still too surprised to speak to her. I couldn't believe the lady I loved and trusted was justifying her actions as though they weren't betrayals. Sure, I knew how stubborn she could be once she made up her mind, but I couldn't just let it go. This was not a debate over where to go on vacation or what color to paint the living room. This was a marriage-ending mistake. Even if I convinced her not to do it this time, what guarantee did I have that she wouldn't do it again? Behind my back. What if I did and then allowed it? How could I possibly look at her in the same manner again? What type of precedent would this set? How long till there was another man? She simply needed to vent her feelings. Worse, would she eventually resent me for not standing up for our marriage? The more I thought about it, the more hopeless it seemed. There were no decent choices. This already seemed like the beginning of the end. But as I laid in bed later that night, I realized that my only chance was to persuade her to go to counseling with me. Maybe we could figure out what was motivating this sudden desire to risk everything we had achieved together. Emily woke on Wednesday morning and rolled over, wanting to cuddle. James, my hands. Her heart sunk as she discovered his side of the bed remained untouched. Confused, she got up and checked the home, including the guest bedroom and the couch. His Roberto bile was still gone. He had not returned home at all. Panic began to set in. She pulled up her phone and discovered there were no texts or voicemails. She contacted him, but the call went directly to voicemail. A few minutes later, she received a text response. Emily, we'll be home by 7 p.m. tonight. Please go ahead and eat before I arrive. We should have a meaningful talk about our future together. Emily glanced at the letter. Her rubber taste each tightening first. She thought, God, James, Deems, stop being so dramatic. But as the words sank in, she became worried. Instead, then, frustrated, James was questioning whether they had a future together, which worried her. She adored him and wanted to be with him. Why couldn't he understand it that evening at work? She intended to persuade him of her point of view. Emily was distracted, her mind racing between James's reaction and her intentions with Daniel. Her fears were interrupted as Daniel approached her desk with a confident smile. Good morning. Sexy, he murmured, smoothly. You look nicer than enough to kiss and hug right now. I can't wait to do just that on Saturday. So are we still on? Have you told your husband? Should I be worried? Emily flashed him a comforting smile, but her thoughts were jumbled. Daniel, let me worry about James. He would not harm a fly. He isn't sold on the idea yet, but he'll be okay. And yeah, we are still scheduled for Saturday. I get thrilled, simply thinking about it. As Daniel went away, Emily checked her phone again. She sent James another text. James, are you all right? Please understand that I just adore you. I only want you, and my future with you will be much brighter after this. An hour later, James's response arrived. Yes, certainly. The brusque, cynical response stung. Emily felt both angry and sad. Why is he so immature about this? She thought. At the same moment, she despised how much misery she was obviously bringing him. She told herself that once everything was said and done, she could more than make amends to him. With all of her love and attention later, she was confident that their relationship would not just repair, but thrive. I called in sick to work on Wednesday, still unable to face the world. After I learned it, Emily had left for the day. I returned to the house to get my equipment and put myself into finishing some last-minute things on the RV. I mounted and tested the solar panels, completed the electrical and Wi-Fi connections, put a new toilet cassette, and filled the tanks with water. My mind raced while I worked. The RV was a fantasy. It had for Emily and me a chance to make memories and plan an adventurous future together. But now, every step I took toward completing, it seemed pointless. I couldn't get over the image of her with Daniel or her determination that she needed this one-time experience to feel complete. The treachery stung worse than I ever imagined. I adored Emily, but her obstinate decision to go through with this had me questioning everything about our marriage, our love, and whether we had a future at all. I thought I could finish the cabinets by Thursday, making the RV road ready. The task was a wonderful distraction, allowing me to briefly put aside the incessant anguish and misery I was experiencing. Emily had 2 hours till she was expected home. I moved my concentration. I looked up divorce, finances, and counselors online, devising a tentative strategy for either a contingency, saving the marriage, or ending it. Next, I strolled throughout the house, creating a list of everything I own that had sentimental or practical significance. Afterward, I went to the bank at the bank. I canceled our joint credit card and opened a new one in my name alone. I also canceled our joint checking account and opened a new one just for myself. I prepaid the mortgage for the next 2 months using our joint account, then divided the leftover balance. Half went into my savings account, and I had a check written for Emily's portion. Financial logistics are addressed. I stopped at a pub I liked, got a craft beer and a burger, and braced myself for the uncomfortable chat that awaited me back home. Emily arrived home around 6 p.m. to find the house calm. James was there, and she couldn't tell if he had been home at all. She got her selfish and attempted to figure out how to approach their conversation in such a manner that James would grasp her point of view without escalating the conflict. Emily went to James as soon as he walked in, wrapped her arms around him tightly, and kissed him on the lips. She kept him close for a long time. James, don't ever leave like that again, without telling me Yuri. Okay, I knew you were hurting, but I was very concerned about you. I needed to know you were safe. She gazed up at him, her tone softening. James, I love you, only you. I will always love just you. James, you don't have to be hurting. You and I are firm. We're united now, and always shall be. I drew back slightly, my voice calm yet forceful. Say you knew I was hurt. Really, and you only love me. I wish that were true, Emily, but I am no longer sure. A week ago, I would never have imagined you could ask me for what you are asking today. Permission to pursue an affair outside of our marriage. You want me to approve of something that contradicts all I thought we stood for, and then want us to return to the way things were. It's incomprehensible to me that you say you love me while asking for this. Emily's expression stiffened. James, don't you dare say I don't love you. Is not cheating. If you agree, and it's just sex only one time. Quit being overly dramatic and demure. I repeated, my wrath rising. Emily, I look at the woman I loved as if she's been possessed by someone I don't know. You're attempting to persuade me that you love me while asking me to accept you having sex with another man for a weekend. And then, what do you think? Well, I was a Methodist. Just go back to being the same couple. Are we the same companions as before? That won't happen. Emily, never. I took a step back, my voice shaking from anguish and anger. How would you feel if I went out and slept with someone else, only to come back and tell you it was just sex, that it meant nothing? Would you be okay with that? Emily folded her arms defensively. James, you had dozens of women and a variety of sexual encounters before we met. I didn't get to try any of that to answer your question. No, if you went out to have sex with someone else, it boot you out, and I'm not sure if I could forgive you. Her words wounded, but I pushed on. So why should it be different from me? Emily, why don't I kick you out? And why do you believe I would be able to forgive you? Emily, her sis eyes narrowed. James, I cannot believe you're turning this into something it is not. By the way, had you previously agreed on this? Did you talk to your sweetheart today and promise him that you'd sleep with him this weekend? Emily flinched at my words. Damn you, James. Why are you making this so ugly? He is not my sweetheart. At most, he will provide a one-time sexual encounter. And yeah, I talked to him on Saturday. Hell, pick me up in the morning. We'll be back Sunday evening. And on Monday, it'll rock your world by being the sexiest, most loving wife you could ever ask for. You're ready. With that, I replied harshly. But if you go through with it, you'll never be the same again. Emily gasped and recoiled, like if I had slapped her. She sank into a chair in her kitchen. Her voice broke as she begged with me. James, please know how much I love you. Please do not allow anything jeopardize our marriage and partnership. You're my husband now, and will always be my sweetheart, my best pal, the one I aspire to father. We have children. You are my everything. I shook my head, my voice low and heady with sadness. God, Emily, you're not on the same world as me. Right. Now, if all of that were true, you would never consider doing what you're about to do on Saturday. This conversation is not going anywhere. I'm telling you, right now, if you go through with this, we're done. Do you comprehend what I'm saying? Done. I turned to leave. I'm heading toward the door. Emily jumped up. Panic gripped her voice. James, do not walk away. Do not do this. I paused for a moment. My back is to her. Emily, you'll bring dinner Friday night at 7 p.m. I responded, my voice tense with rage and hurt. What time does Daniel take you up? Saturday morning. I told him it was 11 a.m. She responded nervously, adding, but you don't have to leave, James. I truly like you to meet him. I halted, staring at her with bewilderment. Jesus. Emily, meet him. Are you out of your mind? If I see him, it'll beat the living hell out of him. Why would I ever want to meet the guy who is attempting to destroy our marriage? Think about it, James, she implored before Friday. Simply think about it. No, Emily, I replied, coldly. Do not ask me to meet him, and don't pretend this isn't already pulling us apart. Please, James, she implored. Do not leave like this. Tell me, Yuri. Okay, but this is not going to harm us. I shook my head. My speech was full with hatred. Emily, I will never agree with you having sex with anyone other than your husband. If you want to sleep with someone else, get a divorce and bang every man in the world. Hell, screw the Martians for all I care. But don't expect me to sit here and act like everything is good. Your seemingly insignificant request has already caused us more harm than you realize. Emily's face sank. But before she could speak, I said, I'll make one promise to you. Emily, if you cancel this romance, tell Daniel that you do not want to see him again. And if you commit to go to counseling with me to work on our marriage, perhaps we will be okay. If not, then we're done. Tell me your response by Friday night. Think carefully about what you are doing to us. Don't give me ultimatums, James, she shouted fiercely. And just don't leave me. We will be all right. Perhaps even better after this. Yes, right, I said, my voice full of cynicism. Pigs are flying with that. I turned to walk out the door, turning off the voice recorder in my pocket. I returned to the Hilton and booked a room for Wednesday and Thursday nights. Then, I called my boss and informed him that I had a family issue and needed the remainder of the week off. Though hesitant, he eventually agreed, sensing that I was not going to reveal any information. Meanwhile, Emily collapsed over the kitchen table. When I placed her head in her hands, she was enraged by my persistence, but also deeply disturbed. She was certain that I would never leave her, but the harm to our relationship was irreversible. Could things get any worse if she followed through with her plans? Her yearning for Daniel was quite great. Her need and lust for him had developed into an obsession. She couldn't shake. She had already committed to this weekend. Nonetheless, she decided to compromise. She would tell me on Friday night that she was going to spend the weekend, but she would also promise to go to marriage counseling afterwards. She dragged herself to bed. She laid there, her mind racing. I was her whole universe. She knew that. But this is what she was doing to me, to us. Her pain and wrath were equally acute as mine for varied reasons. Did she truly mean it? Could she just let go? But she had already persuaded herself that she did not need this. She could not back out. Now, not after committing to Daniel. My argument seemed absurd to her. It had dozens of women and could reflect on those experiences. Whenever I felt restless or bored in our marriage, she had never had that. This was only sex. Only one time. Just for her. He should get over himself. She muttered into the darkness on Thursday morning after Emily had departed for work. I returned to the house. I started softly, packing everything I wanted to take, knowing Emily wouldn't notice it was gone. I loaded my belongings into the RV, including equipment, clothing and personal items, and went to the thrift store to give garments I'd never worn before leaving. I dropped off tools, sports equipment, and other lair stuff that I didn't have place for to the home of my best friend, Robert. I gave him a couple of pen and ink sketches. My uncle had done thinking. He'd enjoy them over beers. I had dated Robert on everything that had happened. He listened closely, his face becoming increasingly skeptical with each statement. When I finished, he shook his head, stunned. "James, you have got to be kidding me," he said it. Finally, "There is no way Emily would do that to you. I've never seen a lady more in love with a man than she's with. Are you certain this is what you want to do?" Maybe she had a concussion because this does not sound like her. "Robert, I'm not sure about anything anymore. I admit it. I'm not sure it's up or down, right or wrong. My entire life has been turned upside down in the span of 1 week, and Emily appears to be an entirely different person. I just don't understand it. But I know this. My love for her is already under attack, as is every sad explanation she gives for how this will help our marriage." He gets progressively weaker. Robert leaned forwards. His expression was one of concern. "Cannot you forgive and forget? Get counseling and move on?" "Hell, no," I replied strongly. I've informed her that I'm willing to go to counseling if she doesn't go through with it. But if she does, there's no turning back. I attempted to talk her out of it. Robert around night is my final opportunity. I'm going to see if I can give her enough climax and fantastic sex to make her listen to reason. Robert raised his beer in a sarcastic toast. "Good luck, guy. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help." "Well, not with the orgasms. But do you know anything else?" "Well, James," Robert continued, shaking his head, "that if the worst happens, please let me know. I'll absolutely assist you out with some payback." I gave out a short, bitter laugh. "Okay, Robert, I will think about it. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself," Robert advised, slapping me on the back. "By the way, in obtaining a new phone number, I'll text it to you so we can stay connected. Keep coming hanging there." "Man," I nodded and walked away. My next destination was the Verizon store, where I received a new phone number. I moved our current phone plan to Emily's name and kept mine separate from there. I took the RV out for its first test run. Everything went flawlessly, and I felt a little sense of accomplishment. I completed the cabinets, obtained new license, plates and insurance, and officially proclaimed it roadworthy. Back home, I walked into our shared home office and wiped away all of my personal emails and paperwork, removing any traces of my previous life from the computer. Then, I sat down and wrote an email address for family, friends, relatives, and co-workers. It outlined Emily's activities, as well as my response, in the event that I couldn't persuade her. Otherwise, Emily, according to the email I sent, has decided to have an affair and has asked for my approval. Despite my protestations and warnings that it will destroy our marriage, she has insisted on going ahead with it, citing the excuse that it is simply sex. I wanted to let you know that. I urged her to reconsider and informed her that if she went through with it would mean the end of our relationship. You'll understand why we separated. I hoped I wouldn't have to send it. But if the worst happened, I wanted the truth to be known to back it up. I'd attached the voice recording I did earlier this week on Friday. I met with a divorce attorney. He indicated that, with comparable wages and no children, the divorce would most likely result in a $5,050 distribution of all assets. The confusion stemmed from my 401k, which had over $2,000 in tax-deferred funds, to which I had made significant contributions. Emily, on the other hand, was enrolled in a defined pension plan, making it difficult to foresee how this would affect asset division. Notion of losing half my retirement money to someone who intended to cheat on me enraged me to avoid this. I considered withdrawing the money before starting a divorce, even if it meant paying a 40 tax penalty. Still, I resolved to wait until the weekend was over, hoping to persuade Emily to halt this misery. As Friday neared, I knew that Emily had complete control over our future marriage and love. Make the right decision. That evening, I went to the store to get shrimp, some fish, and a Caesar salad. I fired up the grill, chilled 2 bottles of white wine, and prepared a batch of gin and tonics. She was overjoyed to see me cooking in the kitchen. "Thank God, you're here, here. James," she exclaimed, rushing up to hug me fiercely. "I missed you so much. I despise it. When you're not here, you must promise to quit doing that. You know how much I worry about you. I love you, James. I adore you and need you to be with me." Her words struck me hard, knowing how little they matched her actions. But I forced a grin and drew her into my arms. I gave her a long, gentle French kiss, and she melted into me. "Emily," I spoke quietly, "why don't you go upstairs? Take a shower and change into something sexy. Bring this gin and tonic with you to begin the celebration. When you get back, he'll put this stuff on the grill and, well, have a great meal." Emily frowned slightly. James, stop talking like that. You upset me by questioning our marriage. I've told you repeatedly that I only love you, and that this isn't about you. It's something I need to get off my chest." "Emily," I interrupted gently, "we've got over this. Let's put that debate aside for now. Go relax. Drink your gin and tonic. Take a shower. Then, well, eat dinner and get to the fun portion of the evening." She sighed, a little smile spreading over her lips. "Okay, mister. But I expect you to stay for tonight. No walking out on me and leaving me to wonder if you're okay. You'll return wearing something that expresses how much I value you and want you forever." She went upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. When Emily came back down, I turned to greet her and gasped. Perhaps it was a groan that escaped my lips. She was dressed in a French-made ensemble that included a small white cat, a low-cut blouse that left little to the imagination, and a midriff that popped out just above a short skirt that stopped well above the tops of her black silk thigh. Her stockings. She topped the ensemble with her stiletto heels that highlighted her lengthy legs. "My God, Emily," I breathed, unable to conceal my response. "You are fantastic." Emily gave me a cheeky look and a mischievous pose. "Good. That's exactly what I was looking for. A brief period. I forgot everything else. But as much as I wanted to cling on to that sensation, the reality of what lay ahead was unavoidable. I realized that this evening may be the final time we fully connected as a couple, or the beginning of the end. I couldn't take my gaze away from Emily and waved David. "You look absolutely stunning." She grinned and gave me a teasing wink. "I'm pleased. You think so, because this is only a sneak peek. I purchased a selection of costumes that you would appreciate as much as this one. Now let's put the stuff on the grill. I'm hungry, but I really can't wait to get to dessert." We hurried through dinner, completing the gin and tonics and consuming 1/3 of the first bottle of wine. I couldn't wait any longer. I scooped Emily into my arms, carried her upstairs and carefully placed her on the bed. She quickly grabbed for my belt and zipper, but I stopped her. "Tonight is for you, Emily," I said softly. "I'm going to worship your body and make our love, making so memorable that you'll see how good we are together and why we only belong to each other." Emily's eyes softened. "We only belong to each other. Honey, this will never change. Please make love to me tonight. Let us leave the stress of the past several days behind and re-emphasize our love for each other." We made love that night with an intensity I hadn't experienced in years. Emily lay gasping as we finished, her body exhausted and satisfied. She fell asleep with a lovely smile on her face, Emily awoke the next morning at 8:30 am. She realized it was time to get up and start preparing. Daniel would pick her up at 11 am. And as the reality dawned on her, a rush of shame, worry and lust flowed through her. She reflected on the night before, how great it had been, and for a little minute, she wondered what she was doing. Could anything be better than that? But her willful mind brushed the thought aside. She had made a commitment and felt compelled to keep it. I was already awake, and the fragrance of bacon, eggs and coffee filled the air. Emily put on a robe and headed downstairs to see me in the kitchen. James, she spoke softly. Last night was amazing. That's how I view our future. I adore you, and I'm grateful for all you have given me. I did not respond, and instead, in focusing on finishing the eggs, would you like anything to eat? I asked coldly. It'd best not eat right now, James. But thank you, she murmured hesitantly. I need to get ready. Daniel and I are going out at 11. Sure, so I will preserve my appetite for that. Her words struck me like a blade, but I forced myself to remain calm. I need to shower and get ready. She proceeded. Please stay here so that we can hug and kiss goodbye for the weekend. I turned to her, my words filled with grief. Emily, I'm not going to beg you anymore. I'll ask you one final time. Are you sure you want to have sex with someone other than your husband? Emily sighed with frustration. James, stop. This is merely a one-time thing. It makes no difference to your feelings for each other. I shake my head. My face was filled with grief. I will not go till I have told you goodbye. Emily, she flinched at my tone. The pain in my voice ripped through her determination. It felt like a final farewell, rather than a simple goodbye, and the thought sent shivers down her spine. James, I love you, she spoke, her voice trembling. This is going to be okay. You will see. I simply need to get this off my chest. Never forget that you and I will be together forever, and we shall be better and stronger in the future. Yes, right, I responded harshly. I am so sad that you can believe it. Her cheeks reddened and tears filled her eyes. She ran to the bathroom, closing the door behind her and leaning against the counter. She wondered how you could keep being so emotional about this. She persuaded herself, yet again, that I simply needed time to adjust once the weekend was over. She would dedicate herself to making amends to me. She thought this will change James, but to work to relieve his pain. Oh, see how much I adore him, and everything will be fine. He always gives me what I want. This won't be any different. Emily showered, applied makeup and carefully selected her clothes. She decided on a sexy, but not too provocative outfit. High stockings, and heels. When she arrived downstairs with her weekend luggage, it was already 10:30 am, and time was running out. I looked up as she entered the room, my heart sinking at seeing her dressed to see another man. It felt as if a dagger had been inserted into my chest. James, are you okay? She asked cautiously. You know how much I adore you, don't you? And do you love me? Didn't last night teach you how we can overcome this and continue to have a fantastic life? I took a long breath. My voice, soft, yet frigid. Emily, I wanted last night to be memorable for both of us. It was a celebration of our marriage. I wanted our last moment together to be a memory that we could both cherish for the rest of our lives. Her eyes widened with shock. James, go down. You do not say it's our final time together. That is cruel. You're simply trying to make me feel bad over one pointless weekend of sex that I needed to get out of my system. Of course. Well, be together. And well, be better than before. She attempted to kiss and hug me, but I took a step back and held her at arm's length. I peered into her eyes, my voice firm and decisive. Emily, the night is done. You've made your decision. James, this is simply a one-time occurrence, Emily exclaimed, her voice harsh with displeasure. You're being very dramatic about this. I deserve it. You've had dozens of fantasies about different women, and I have nothing. I feel an intense physical want to be with this man and get it out of my system. It's not love. It reveals nothing about our connection, or how much I adore you. I glanced at her, my pain changing to steely determination. Yes, Emily, this is it for you. Maybe. But for us, this is the end. Before she could react, a Roberto Bile pulled into the driveway, breaking the silence. Emily gazed toward the window after hearing a horn blast twice. She said, "James, you need to stop all of this drama." Her voice was full of frustration. "Damn it. We'll return to you on Sunday night and you'll be my one love and life companion." The horn sounded again, and she added cautiously, "Should I let Daniel inside? Maybe when you meet him, you'll understand. H.E.S. only a kid. Someone I am physically attracted to, but who does not threaten my love for you." I took a deep breath, my hands trembling with rage, and spoke in the calmest voice I could manage. "Don't even consider letting him in here. If I see him, he'll smash his nose, jaw and balls. He'll rip off his penis and push it down his mouth, enjoying every moment of it, while he screams in agony." Emily shrank back in horror. She had never seen me this angry before, anger that veered toward violence. Her lips quivered as she begged, "James, please let this go. Let me have this one time, and I'll return home to love you forever." She took up her purse and approached the door. She turned to smile at me, but the agony and sorrow on my face stopped her for a second. Fear flashed in her eyes, fear of what I could do to myself, and remorse over the misery she was inflicting me. She blew me a kiss, smiled softly, and said, "James, Sunday night and beyond, I will be the best wife and partner you could ever hope for. I love you. Goodbye." She paused there for a while, as if reconsidering before turning and walking out the door. I sat at the kitchen table, head in my hands, and cried. I felt like I had done everything I could to prevent this marriage-ending affair. But Emily seemed to be living in another reality, rash, realizing that this would be beneficial to us, and something she needed to do for herself. After sobbing for 30 minutes, I stood up. My sorrow was gradually turning into rage. I started moving everything I cared about into the RV. I began in the bedroom, where I discovered Emily had placed her wedding rings in a dish on top of her dresser. I scooped them up and placed them in my pocket. Their weight is feeding my increasing wrath. 2 hours later, it packed everything vital to me. The paintings, sketches, and sculptures my uncle had left for me were neatly wrapped and kept beneath the RVS queen-size bed. I went through my clothes, rejecting the ones I didn't want, and tossing them in the garbage can in the garage. As I strolled around the home, my rage grew. I came across our wedding album, a treasured remembrance of the 5 years we had shared together. Looking at that, made me happy and peaceful. Now it's only made my suffering worse. I grabbed a box cutter from the garage and marched back inside. On each page in the album, I cut through the images on several of them. I took out the parts of the photographs that showed our faces and flung them into the flames. I sat down at the desk and, through tears, penned my final letter to Emily. The words flowed out of me, fresh and uncensored. When I was finished, I put the letter and the check for her, part of our joint accounts, in an envelope with her name on the front. I placed it on the kitchen table, with the shattered wedding album and my wedding ring. Finally, I signed into our email account and scheduled the email that I had written earlier, detailing Mole's behavior and my response. I scheduled it to be sent to all of our friends, relatives, and acquaintances on Monday at 9 a.m. By then, he'd be long gone. I turned, walked out the door, got into the RV, and drove away from my former life by mid-Saturday afternoon. Emily and Daniel were sitting across from each other in a nice brunch place, joking and flirting. They checked into the hotel Daniel had planned for the weekend, a suite, in the hopes of persuading her to stay both nights as they rest. Emily felt both excited and nervous. The reality of being with another man had finally set in. She cowed and hid her excitement, while a sliver of uncertainty crossed her thoughts. What am I doing? She had a thought. Daniel kissed her several times, his hands enthusiastically exploring her body, but she said, Relax, Daniel. We've got plenty of time today, and Robert'll roll. Let's take it slowly, he replied, dismissively. That's not my thing, he responded impatiently. And without hesitation, he moved quickly, taking Emily off, unprepared as he awkwardly attempted to establish intimacy. Emily's enthusiasm began to wane. The experience was far from the passionate, gratifying encounter she had envisioned. Instead of feeling desired, she felt rushed, and the emotional and physical connection she had hoped for was conspicuously absent. She lay down, staring at the ceiling. She's becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Is this why I tossed everything away? She wondered. A bit is growing in her as Robert ACH, feeling dissatisfied and alienated. Emily lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling as Daniel excused himself to the bathroom and promised to bring her a washcloth. A profound sensation of regret began to wash over her. What she had expected to be a significant and exciting event had turned out to be shallow and unsatisfying. She reached for her phone on the side table and hurriedly typed a message to James. My love, please know that I just adore you. Please let me know that you are okay, and that you adore me. I cannot wait to see you again. When Daniel returned, he appeared ready to go again. They had sex 3 times in the afternoon. Emily eventually climaxed the 3rd time, but only through her own efforts, and the experience left her feeling even more empty. Later, they dressed and headed out to dinner. The evening was awkward, full of forced and small conversation with no genuine physical or emotional connection. Emily had fooled herself that she felt something for Daniel, but the magic had vanished. Dinner was followed by dance. However, she seemed to be dancing with her brother or uncle, rather than a romantic companion. The intense physical attraction she had envisioned was no longer present. However, Daniel was ready to return to his hotel room. Emily kept ordering drinks, hoping to delay the inevitable. They both became so inebriated that they had problems finding their way back to the room. Emily hurriedly removed her clothes, turned away from Daniel, and fell asleep. Emily awoke in the morning with a throbbing headache, her hangover exacerbating the regret she already felt. Daniel snored alongside her, and as she lay there, she contemplated whether she should try to salvage the weekend or give up. She finally decided that since the damage had already been done, she would give it another shot to see if it could be the unforgettable experience she had hoped for. She attempted to initiate closeness by surprising Daniel with love, but the moment ended suddenly when he responded without warmth or caring. Feeling discouraged, she leaned closer and asked, "How did you like that, baby?" Daniel recoiled and pulled away. "Oh, that's disgusting. Could you quickly clean up and then get back into bed?" He spoke dismissively. The words hit Emily like a slap. Her heart sunk and she grabbed her cell phone. She went to the bathroom, locked the door behind her, turned on the water, and scrubbed herself furiously, as if to wash away her remorse. After drying, she perched on the toilet edge and checked her phone. James gave no reaction. Desperation tugged at her, and she attempted to phone him, but it went directly to voicemail. She sent another SMS. "James, I love you. Are you okay? Please let me know you're okay, and that we can get through this. This has become a worthless and painful era, and I know you're the only one I'll want forever. I will be home as soon as possible to hug you and tell you how much I love you. Please let me know you're fine later." Emily persuaded Daniel to join her for breakfast. As they were wrapping up, she looked at him with a calm but determined expression and stated, "Daniel, this was a mistake for me. I only adore my hubby, and this weekend has proven that no one can compare to him in my eyes. I'm heading up to the hotel to pack my luggage and depart. Right now, we'll take an taxi. I don't want to see you again for lunch, happy hour, or dinner, and did prefer if we avoided each other at work." Daniel glared, his voice full of hate. Well, screw you were the one who persuaded me to do this. Go ahead and return to your hubby. Try to forget how good the sex with me was. There are many more attractive women than you who would love to take a crack at me. Emily's lips twisted into an unfunny smile. Daniel, you are only a lad, and you have no idea how to delight a woman. Come out of your delusion with it. She stood, walked up to the room, packed her belongings, and then departed. She took a taxi and got home around 3 p.m. It's Sunday afternoon. The first thing Emily noticed as she came into the driveway was that the RV, which had taken up half of the driveway, had vanished. Her S-Robert-ACH sank. I imagine James finished the contraction and decided to take it for a test drive. Perhaps an overnight trip. I wish I could have been here for the first sale. As she entered into the house, an unsettling silence greeted her. She sensed, rather than saw, that something was different. The first visible indication was the vacant area of the fireplace. James's uncle's old painting of waves smashing on Moonlight Bay was no longer there looking around. She noticed that many of his other drawings, paintings, and sculptures were vanished. Her heart fell. Oh no, no. James, what did you do? She cried aloud, even though she knew no one was listening. She immediately grabbed out her phone and discovered that James had still not answered to any of her texts. She dialed his number again. But this time, an overrated Verizon message notified her immediately. Emily's heart stopped when she heard the overrated message. The number you're attempting to call is no longer in service. She slumped to the floor, releasing a piercing scream. Her body trembled as the weight of her actions struck her like a freight train. Oh God, no. What did I do? Oh, James. How could you do it? How could you leave me like this? Choking on, sobbing, she climbed to her feet, gasping for oxygen as tears flowed down, her cheeks moving as fast as she could. She stumbled into the kitchen. She froze at the kitchen table. James's wedding ring was deliberately put on top of a letter. Their wedding album lay behind the letter. Emily knelt down again. After a brief moment of anguish, she sat down in a chair, her hands quivering as she picked up James's ring and stared at it. As the truth of the situation dawned on her, she burst into tears. The ring was tightly clenched in her fist. After a few minutes, she reached for the envelope, ripped it open and unfolded the letter. Her eyes searched the paper. As sobs erupted throughout her body, she attempted to concentrate, despite the tears. As she began reading, Emily, as you might guess, this is my last goodbye to you. Perhaps I'm a coward, but I couldn't trust myself to confront you. After you left me in our marriage, I found your wedding bands in a bowl on your dresser. They're the ideal symbol of how you abandoned our marriage. You left, knowing that wearing those rings would require you to admit you were cheating. It would destroy your notion of having a free weekend pass. I guess you honestly believed you could sleep with someone else. Come back to me and pretend our marriage is the same. I'm honestly not sure what you were thinking. How could you possibly think it was okay to break our wedding vows, humiliate and degrade me, then act as if it were simply a worthless weekend fling? But here is the truth. It was not meaningless. It meant everything. Your acts demonstrated that your love for me, if you ever truly loved me, was nothing compared to my love for you. It was not what I deserved, and it was not who I was. I was naive enough to believe it. You've hurt me more than anyone else has in my life. You took my affection for you. I ripped it out of my chest and stepped on it. You cheated on me. The moment you began flirting with your boyfriend during lunch and happy hour, you sealed the betrayal by kissing him. And you dealt the final blow when you asked if I was comfortable with you having a full-blown affair. How could you possibly think you deserved it? And that, if I loved you, it'd grant you permission. You're not sure how your mentality grew. So perverted. I did everything I could to draw you back from the cliff, but you disregarded me. I warned you that if you did this, our love, marriage, and friendship would be forever changed. You labeled me immature and overdramatic. I told you we could go to counseling and work to save our marriage, but you blew me off. I warned you that our amazing night of love-making would be the last time we were together, if you followed through with this. But you decided to ignore me. You expected I would comply and forgive you, no matter what. I don't understand how you could have thought it'd be all right. With this, it's as if you've never known me. And I clearly didn't know you either. Because I trusted you. I trusted you more than anyone else. And I would never have thought you were capable of ruining me like this. Yes, I could have physically prevented you from leaving. But I knew. If I did, you'd develop resentment toward me. And our marriage would die a slow and painful death. And even if this was only a one-time occurrence, as you claim, I knew it would not end there. If the sex was awful, how long would it take you to find another man who could meet your needs? And if the sex was enjoyable, how long would you want it? Again, you wouldn't even inform me the next time you conceal it. Because you would see what we are going through right now and would not want to go through it. Again, I could not live like that. I couldn't be married without trust. And my trust in you has been entirely broken. I can never love you again. Knowing that, when we made love, you might have been thinking of someone else to fantasize about another man. The instant you walked out that door, you abandoned the love, respect and friendship you professed to have. For me, you wrecked it all. I would never forgive you for it. I can never trust you again. And I surely cannot stay in this marriage. Emily's hands shook his. Tears flowed down, and her face dripped over the page. She struggled to continue reading with blurred eyes. In my fury and anguish, I've also done a few practical things. I have removed my name from the mortgage and signed a fast claim document to transfer the property to your name. You may either sell it or live there. It does not matter to me. It is no longer my home, and I will never return. I cancelled all of our joint credit cards, so you'll need to acquire your own. I cashed out my 401k and left my work. I sold my automobile. And, as you've presumably noticed, I've taken off in the RV. I don't have a clear goal in mind other than taking a left out of the driveway and sorting out my life from there. Your wedding rings are with me. I will eventually pawn them for petrol, money or food. At the very least, they will provide some relief from my rage and anguish. I have done a few things I am not proud of, but I do not regret them. I took a box cutter to our wedding album. You can see bits of the images in the fireplace. Go ahead and burn them. It seems like an appropriate cremation for our marriage. I've also emailed all of our friends, relatives, co-workers, acquaintances, explaining why, in leaving, I told them about your decision to cheat on me, as well as my decision to leave, because I couldn't take it anymore. You'll get a day or two to tell the story how you wish. But this could be your moment to start accepting responsibility for what you've done. The good news is that you now have my full permission to sleep with anybody you want. Have all of the sexual encounters or affairs you've been wanting. It only asks that you spare married men. You have already damaged enough lives. Go ahead and find what you were seeking for when you threw us away. Like yesterday's newspaper. As for me, I intend to start a new life, leaving you in the rearview mirror. If I'm lucky enough to meet a lady who loves me the way I deserve, he'll be concerned about divorce. Until then, I do not expect to see or hear from you again. Goodbye. Emily's hands shook. She read the letter repeatedly, unable to accept what was happening. James's ears laughed. Noticeable dates on the pages. The pain in his words devastated her. Had she felt a strong wave of G rise in her Robert ACH? She stumbled to the sink, barely making it before throwing up. Her head whirled, and she almost passed out. Oh my God, she murmured, grabbing the sink's edge. What did I do? How could I have been so selfish and blind? How could I harm the only man ill ever? Truly. Love. She dragged herself to the couch, collapsed on it, and curled into a fetal posture. Tears streamed down her cheeks, as she recalled every stubborn argument and warning James had given her. She couldn't believe how preoccupied she'd been with her ephemeral desire for anything fresh. So much so that she ignored every indication that this would destroy everything she owned. The weight of her action struck her like a sledgehammer. She had ruined her life in a matter of weeks, and she knew she would have to pay the consequences for the rest of her life. James, meantime, was traveling along the Mississippi River after leaving Minneapolis and straight. Oh, He chose to follow the river all the way to New Orleans. He didn't have much of a strategy after that. When he arrived in New Orleans, he'd have to decide whether to turn left or right. The long hours of driving were accompanied by unsettling memories of Emily. And if he had done the right thing every now and then, a memory of her smile lulled laughter into his thoughts, bringing the anguish of her treachery back as fresh as ever. But James vowed that he would not make any judgments concerning his future for several weeks. He couldn't envision himself being friends with Emily, let alone companions. Again, the scars were too raw, and the trust was too deeply destroyed. Nonetheless, he clutched onto the tiny ray of hope. That time might soften the edges of his rage and anguish. Perhaps if the agony subsided, and he began to miss her, rather than despise her, he would consider opening the door to communication. For the time being, his only objective was to keep driving and leave the ruins of his previous life far behind. While driving down the Mississippi, James found himself thinking about the potential of reconciling with Emily one day. However, he assigned it less than a 10 possibility. He realized it would be a long and tough journey back, needing enormous work and trust here that he didn't think could ever be reestablished. Meanwhile, Emily had to face the embarrassment and sorrow of justifying her conduct to her parents, family, and friends. She attempted to justify her decision to have a sexual fling, but the more she spoke, the more she realized how ridiculous her explanation was. Nobody could grasp her mental state, and she couldn't either. Not anymore. She had convinced herself that the flirtation would have no effect on her marriage, would not damage James, and would not disrupt her life. When confronted with the reality of what she had done, she admitted the truth. She had acted selfishly, foolishly, and recklessly. She had not realized the significance of her acts until it was too late. Her connections with family and friends started to deteriorate. They looked at her differently, with disappointment and sadness. Some pushed away completely, leaving her increasingly isolated. Emily knew she had not only ruined her marriage, but also the respect and trust of those closest to her. Emily, desperate for any chance to reconnect with, James started calling his best friend, Robert. Once a week, she asked him for James's location, phone number, or even a method to message him. "Please, Robert," she pleaded, "just tell James. I adore him. I miss him so terribly. I know I made a huge mistake, and I now realize how much I wounded him. I accept full responsibility for what I did, and I will do anything to put things right." Her voice broke as she added, "Tell him I won't divorce him. We'll stick to our marital vows, no matter what. I will not date or engage in any male relationships while we are still married. I just want a chance to try. Please." Each week, she waited for a response, which never arrived. James stayed mute. She stopped going out with friends and retreated to a solitary existence at work and home. She lived in silent seclusion, praying nightly that something, anything, would bring James back to her. Daniel opened the door one evening about a month after Emily's affair, and the doorbell rang. He was greeted silently by a man wearing a ski mask. The officer smacked Daniel twice in the head and neck with a police baton, knocking him to the ground. While he groaned in pain, the attacker landed several strong kicks to his groin. Daniel yelled out in agony and clutched himself as he lay on the ground. The masked man bent down and spoke harshly. "You should learn not to tamper with married women." With that, the man turned to walk away, leaving Daniel groaning on the floor as time passed. Emily and James thought on the circumstances that had ended their marriage. Neither could completely address the question of how Emily convinced herself that everything would be fine. Emily frequently replayed each incident in her head, attempting to identify the precise moment when she lost herself and made the worst decision of her life. 3 years later, Emily was still waiting for James, but he never returned. She kept her commitment, honoring their marriage vows. While in his absence, she lived a quiet, lonely life, holding out hope that one day he would return. One sunny morning, Emily was about to depart for work. There was a knock on her door when she responded. A man stood there holding an envelope in his hand. "Are you Emily?" he asked. Yes, she responded. He handed her the package you'd been served. Emily stood for a time, holding the envelope. She did not cry. She did not react instead. She smiled softly and whispered, "Best wishes, James. I wish you live a nice life." She closed the door, walked inside and sat at her kitchen table. She opened the packet with a calm hand and began reading the divorce papers. For the first time in years she experienced a sense of finality. James was gone and she had only herself to blame. Here's the next story. It started as just another neighborhood gathering. You know, the kind plastic cups filled with inexpensive wine. Everyone appearing to be closer than they are. And there's an implicit race to see who has their life together the best. I didn't think much of it. When the subject shifted to my husband, David has always been a little socially awkward. The guy who stumbles over his words or offers a joke. Nobody understands until it's too late. And yes, I've rolled my eyes at him several times. But that night, fueled by a few too many glasses of Chardonnay and the group's easy encouragement, I decided to participate. "We love David," someone said, half joking. "But he's a little different." "Oh, you have no clue." I jumped in the words, coming out faster than I could think. "You should see him try to fix stuff around the house. It's like watching a YouTube instructional in reverse. Everything simply gets worse." Everyone laughed. Not the polite, "Oh, that is funny" laugh. The genuine gut beep sort that feeds your ego, making you believe you're the funniest person in the room. So I continued going. I swear, I think David is secretly auditioning for America's Funniest Home Videos. For example, when he attempted to fix the garbage disposal and ended up flooding the kitchen. Classic David. By that point, everyone was on board. The males clapped their knees and the women nodded knowingly. I cast a glance at David across the terrace. He was standing at the grill, flipping burgers. His face, a careful mask of indifference. That should have warned me to stop, but the laughter felt too good. And don't get me started on his sense of direction. I ray David dead, grinning. David might get lost in his own driveway. He's an app that is intended to help, but half of the time he fights with it saying no. I know a better way. Spoiler alert. He doesn't. Another round of laughs. Even Karen, who has always looked down on me since we came in, was in tears for once. I felt like a winner. Then David sat down the spatula. I assumed he was only going away to fetch something. But he walked toward us, shoulders rigid and jaw clenched. Everyone fell silent. And that was when he said it. Funny thing, his speech was calm and measured, yet it had an edge that I hadn't heard before. "You know what? That's extremely funny. Spending 15 years trying to make someone happy, only to discover you're the punchline at a backyard BBQ." The silence was terrible. I attempted to laugh it off. Comfort. I realized he had actually left. I considered calling him anyhow. But then my pride kicked in. HES overreacting. It was only jokes. People often taunt their partners. That's what I told myself, as I made a pot of coffee and glanced out the window, trying to convince myself I wasn't the bad guy here. But the reality continued to chew at me. I could still picture his face, and the crack in his voice, as he said, 15 years. I was sure what hurt more that he had gone out or that I hadn't seen it coming. The text restarted in the middle of the morning. Karen, the inquisitive neighbor, was first. "Hello. Just checking in. That was something from yesterday night. I hope you're okay." Then came Jennifer Sarah. "I feel terrible. Would you like to talk? Maybe get some lunch?" Ethan, Karen's husband, Dale, joined in. "Is a good man. I hope you can work things out. Please let me know if I can help." They all met. Well, I suppose. But each message was like a small spotlight on my failure. And things only got worse when Karen texted again, this time with a photo. David was sitting alone in a coffee shop across town when he spotted this and thought of you. "Perhaps you should talk to him." I wanted to yell, cry, or throw my phone across the room. But instead I stared at the photo. David appeared calm and resigned. Perhaps like someone who has already made up their mind about something. By lunchtime, I was pacing the living room, trying to figure out how things had gotten this terrible. It was as if we didn't love each other. Sure, we weren't the pair who shared anniversary wishes on Facebook or addressed each other as babe in public. But we had a wonderful thing. Right. I recalled the last time we had a genuine conversation, rather than just discussing logistics, like grocery lists and payments. It had been months, perhaps longer, between the daily grind and my habit of raving about him to friends. I stopped seeing David as someone who might be broken, and obviously I had reached his breaking point that afternoon. I tried to call him. He did not respond. So I texted David. I'm sorry. Could we please talk? No response. I waited an hour to send another. I am not okay. I need to hear from you. Still, nothing by 4 p.m. The coffee pot was empty and my nerves were frayed. I started looking up stuff, like what to do when your husband departs and how to save a marriage. After making a mistake, I wound up on a site for ladies going through a separation. Except for one comment that stuck with me. The majority of them appeared to be as I was. You cannot cure things if they do not want to be fixed. But you may demonstrate your willingness to try. So I tried. The first thing I did was drive to the coffee shop where Karen had seen him. I truly didn't have a plan. I believed meeting him in person would help. But by the time I arrived, he had left. The barista claimed he had left around an hour ago. And unfortunately, he did not leave a phone number or forwarding address. The next destination was his brother's residence, David's. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. Robert resided a few towns away and had always served as the family mediator. If anyone could talk sense into him, it was Robert. But Robert had no idea where David was either. What the hell happened? CLA, he inquired. His arms folded and leaned against the door frame. It was a stupid fight. I ray David dead. My voice cracking. I mean, not even a fight. I was only fooling around and he became upset. What exactly are you joking about? I paused. Stuff. You know, teasing him. Like everyone else. Robert did not laugh. Sarah, you're not everyone. Yuri, his wife. That night I sat in our bedroom, surrounded by memories of him. His pillow, his clothing, in the closet, and the half-empty cologne bottle on the dresser. Everything felt odd, as if the house was holding its breath, waiting for him to return. I kept thinking about the note he wrote, and how you expressed your feelings. It stuck in my head, like a lousy song. Had I actually made him feel that way? By the time I fell asleep, I was no longer upset. I was just terrified, since I knew an apology or a romantic gesture would not solve the problem. I had broken something that I didn't know how to restore by the next morning. I realized I had to confront the truth. David wouldn't come back unless I gave him a cause to. I couldn't just wait for him to get over it, so I swallowed my pride and drove to his office. I parked outside for what seemed like an eternity, rehearsing what it'd say. But when I eventually went inside, his assistant informed me that he hadn't been in all week. That's when it struck me. He was not simply taking a break from me. He was stepping away from his entire life. A few days later, I received another note in the mail. Not any mail, not a text, but a real letter. Sarah, I've been staying with a buddy to think things through. I kept returning to that night, and it wasn't just the jokes. It was also the understanding that you'd stopped seeing me as your partner quite some time ago. I'm not sure when it happened, but it's evident that it did. I can't be the guy you make fun of, just to make yourself feel better. I deserve better. Honestly. So, do you? I have chosen to file for divorce. It's not an easy decision, but it seems like the correct one. I hope we can handle it respectfully. Take care. David. The finality crushed me. My immediate instinct was to argue, beg and fight. But deep down, I knew he was correct. He'd spent so much time nitpicking his imperfections and ranting to others that he'd forgotten what it meant to love someone unconditionally. Defects included that night I sat in an empty house and allowed myself to feel everything. Regret, shame and misery. I wanted to resent him for giving up, but I couldn't. Since, to be honest, I was the one who gave up first. The divorce was quick and quiet. We didn't have children nor a lot of assets to divide. So, there wasn't anything to argue over. David moved into a little apartment, a few towns away, and I remained in the house. The neighbors stopped bringing it up. Like life went out as usual, but every now and then, I'd see David at the grocery store or driving by in his car. He always seemed content, not necessarily pleasant, but peaceful, and I despised how much he'd act to know. He found his serenity. Without me, it's been a year, and I'm still figuring it out. I've been in therapy, attempting to understand what went wrong, and how I let myself to become someone who took the person who loved me the most for granted. The reality is David leaving me was the wake-up call I didn't realize I needed. It's made me reconsider how I see myself, how I treat those I care about, and what I truly want in a relationship. Do I miss him every freaking day, but I also know he did the right thing. Because sometimes the only way to preserve yourself is to walk away from someone who has already abandoned you. Thank you for listening to today's Street Stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.